Hello, Inklings. I'm Naomi Kinsman, the Executive Director and founder of Society of Young Inklings. Now, you may have already seen the launch video for our Inklings Book 2021. If you have, you can consider this part 2 or act 2 of the celebration because this video features our encore winners. These winners were featured in a previous Inklings book and also won the contest again this year. Their revision process was a little different than the others in that they didn't work individually with an author mentor. Instead, they worked with an author mentor and with one another to choose a revision focus and to take their work together collaboratively to the next level. For anyone who is seeing this video and doesn't know anything about the Inklings Book Contest, I encourage you to look it up on our website at younginklings.org, where you can learn more about this annual opportunity to submit a story or a poem and to get feedback on your work, whether it is through being a finalist in the contest or being a winner in the contest and working with an author mentor, or being any applicant who receives a personalized and encouraging letter. We love featuring writers. We love celebrating you. We love supporting you. And we can't wait to celebrate and support these writers who were featured in our Encore book this year. Happy listening.
My biggest inspirations usually come from the books I read, most of which are written by New York Times bestselling authors. So I read them and I'm like, wow, I want to be on that level someday. So that keeps me pushing myself and trying new styles and genres.
What pushes me most is how much I really love writing. Like, you can make characters do whatever you want, and you can make the story whatever genre, like funny, mysterious, sad, crazy, anything you'd like. So having fun when writing and playing around with the words makes writing a lot easier and fun.
The thing that inspires me is basically my imagination. I write down stories sometimes and then I stop in the middle because I have a better plot line, but I mainly choose my best plot lines. I keep on challenging myself because I know whatever I write can be better.
I think the biggest impetus for me to continue writing is that every time I sit down to write, I see that there's always more to learn. As I grow and learn more skill sets, I see it reflect in my writing. I believe in challenging myself with unfamiliar territory.
I'm currently writing a flash fiction and what could turn out to be a novel, so that's the main step in my writing coming up.
What I think is next for me is I want to publish some books, like actual story books, not only short stories.
The biggest goal I think I have is to continue to write from my heart and write what's really meaningful to me specifically.
My name is Ayana and my piece is titled A Little Dance. I couldn't stop gazing at the piano, almost like I was possessed. And suddenly I was sitting down on the bench. My ears picked up sounds of music and I looked around in confusion. Then my gaze fell to the piano. I was playing. My fingers danced from key to key with ease. I was playing like I had been practicing my whole life. Not one note sounded off. Not once did I doubt which key I should hop to next. Bits of mystery seemed to twist themselves into the tinkling notes of music that filled the air. And I'm sure you know why I stopped in shock once I realized what I was playing. Oh goodness, I was playing the same music as the ballerina. And my dream. Darkness, a fairy tale, scattered shells, an eerie song.
Hi, my name is Mariam Ali, and this is my story called Dear Lily. When I first met you that 5th day of autumn, it was like the black cave in my life had melted away and I could finally see the sky. Not a single cloud in it, and the bright sun that neither blinded you nor was dull. It was like excitement to meet you. I learned your name, Lily. All my worries faded away, and holding your hand gave me comfort. You'd shine your eyes and give a message without words, telling me things of mischief, sadness, happiness, annoyance, or anything you felt. Like squinting if you were annoyed or looking down if you were sad. It didn't matter the way you communicated. You seemed to have words without having words, which surprised me, as I wasn't as enthusiastic to see you the first time I was told I was going to get a foster sister. I didn't need my deceased sister to be replaced.
Hello, my name is Sanjay Ravi Shankar. My story is called A Not So Perfect Vacation. I managed to sleep for a few minutes. Bam! What? Where was I? I opened my eyes in surprise. I noticed that my surroundings were moving fast. I looked back and saw the now sleeping teenager and his outstretched leg. The teenager had kicked my carrier and sent me flying across the airport. The carrier sailed past the gate and next to an exit until it finally crashed into a wall. The impact was so hard that it broke the door open. The rest of the carrier was fine though. Startled, I cautiously climbed out and looked around my surroundings. My whiskers stood on the end from that experience. I couldn't read the signs, so I couldn't find out where I needed to go. Panicking, I walked in a random direction, but a man in a vacuum-like machine was sweeping the floor and heading towards me. With a yelp, I leaped out of the way and outside the airport. The outside world was much different than I was used to. Now I was completely confused. There were some stands selling fruits, food, and other things. Because the airport was on the bay, there were seagulls and boats on the blue sea. All of a sudden, I heard a new deep voice behind me. Well, well, a newcomer?
Hi, I'm Victoria Chue, and my short story piece is called Spirit. Dawn sucked in the biggest but certainly most painful breath she could muster. Fueled by her love for her forest home, she lifted one foot, then the other, launching herself into the raging inferno. Next moment, pain, sharper and quicker than ever, stabbed Dawn in all places. Seconds dragged on, a fierce determination within them. For many moments, breath eluded her. Her heart seemed to stop. Then, with bits of fire searing her skin, Dawn finally emerged on the other side. Instead of being met with little fires that could have been easier to put out, she now faced a wall of them, piling on top of each other to loom over her with power. Dawn, despite her earlier enthusiasm, was ready to give in to all the suffering. Just as she was about to, words echoed in her tired mind. Giving in provides no chance whatsoever. Dawn remembered her mother's words and stiffened. She was the girl who cared for herself, survived on her own, and never relied on others to live. She was the girl who fed herself, provided for herself. Dawn was not ready to give up. Not then, not ever.
One tip I have for other writers is to stick with your gut and go with what you know instead of just continuing to work on it and stress about it, because most of the time, simple is best.
Some things I think about when revising poems are to go over the bigger things first, such as extended metaphors if those are included, and then go over the smaller things such as rhythm and word choice. For those, I usually go one stanza at a time and read it on repeat in my head as I make changes.
Playing around with like where the stanzas could go, even if you're not going to keep it there, like playing around where things could go, or like don't be afraid to add things or like change things, because you can always change it later.
When you're revising your poetry, make sure to read your poetry out loud and think about it as if you're a completely new person who has never seen your work at all. When you're reading your poem, you have all this context and you kind of know what emotions and feelings you want to come across in your writing. But with your reader, they're coming across with a completely new mindset, and they're not going to have any idea what's going on until they read your first line.
Like, I don't really like revising my work sometimes, and sometimes I am really attached to my piece. And no story is perfect. Even a revised one isn't perfect. So even if you're attached to your work, if you look back later on, you'll probably see that it actually improved your story overall.
Having someone to talk to, not only to bounce ideas off of, is a very important part, because there's only so much you can do as the writer where you can build out the world and it is your idea that you bring to life. But talking to another person can give you that perspective of what needs to be said more clearly and what really needs to be explained in your world, because it is a deviation from everyday life. And sometimes readers need to be told how much of a deviation that is.
Hi everyone, my name's Audie and my poem is called Butterfly Beauty. There's something particular about the butterfly. A butterfly can ride up high on a breeze, flash by in the corner of your eye. A butterfly can see families embracing with love, but a butterfly cannot see its own beauty. Others ooh and ah in the butterfly's beauty, but a butterfly cannot. A butterfly cannot see the hues of itself dancing in the sunlight. It cannot see its handsomely colored scales glittering with every turn. A butterfly may not seem different than all the others. Individuality is on the inside. Just like a butterfly, some people cannot see their own beauty. They don't see what others do. You may look into a mirror and see yourself, but others see a butterfly.
Hi, I'm Caitlin. I wrote a poem called Undone. Humans are undoing their home. Every corner is wreathed in terrible flames. All around, the air ripples with heat. Just as deadly are the constant floods and how every day there's less to eat. But the rooster perched at the dinner table, brooding, grasping, insisting, crows, carry on, so man acts as if nothing is wrong. But soon the roof starts to leak, the smoke starts to thicken, the walls start to weep. There's that frightening tug of urgency.
Hello, my name is Karina, and my poem is called The Storm. The storm gallops in across the valley, tickling the dry grass. The first breath of an incoming gale, it stands, sniffing the air, waiting. A hawk cries low overhead, looking for shelter, its silent wings silhouetted against the dark sky. A metallic scent hangs in the air, anticipation. The wind whistles, cantering into a frenzy. Iron-gray clouds begin to gather, above, heavy with rain. The sky drops, showering the parched earth, hooves stomping, trees dancing. A rippling mane of lightning streaks across the sky. 1, 2, 3. Thunder booms, whinnying and echoing throughout the valley. The earth shakes, boom, with the sound of a stampeding herd. The wind picks up as the rain falls harder, flowing into the rising stream. A sleek black coat of churning water. Gradually, the rain slows into a gentle prance. Clip-clop, slowly, stopping. Clouds part, revealing a luminous moon. The eye stares, unblinking, across the plains. A breeze rustles, toying with the fallen leaves. It paws the ground, swishing its tail once, and trots off into the night.
Hi, my name is Reagan Ricker, and I will be reading my poem, Teenage Love. You asked me to marry you at midnight at our local Applebee's, down on one knee like I was your queen, besides the crumpled ketchup packets and puddles of spilled Coca-Cola. And if only for a moment, if only for those couple of seconds, I was. The soft spill of fluorescent lights lit up the constellations of freckles mapped across your face, and you picked me up and we twirled and laughed until the air grew crisp again in the early morning. We drove off into the distance, and it didn't matter where we went, but maybe it should have. I've driven back one too many times to admit, shaking fingers, warily clutching the wheel, like it's my anchor between the edge of life and death. Crumpled tissues littered across the dashboard, a mantra of keep your eyes on the road, echoing in my head with a pound of my heartbeat. And I don't know if it's on purpose, but I always pull into the lot of that same Applebee's, where the ghosts of who we used to be still dance at midnight. And I don't know if it's on purpose, but I always get out and sit down in the same booth we once shared, chugging black coffee that scalds the roof of my mouth, but I guess that's part of the experience. And every time I pull away, sliding the keys into the side of my car carefully and looking into the rearview mirror, I remember we were once just angels visiting a newborn earth. Ares and Aphrodite, Rosalind and Orlando, Romeo and Juliet, and in the name of love, I'm killing myself for you, over and over and over and over again. But what I've come to realize is that maybe in the end, our story was not destined to be worshipped in literature. No, we were not even destined to be remembered. Maybe this time we were both just humans trying to survive, stuck on the idea that love and only love could heal our brokenness.
Hello, my name is Steven, and my story is called Memories. I sat in a cramped booth at a dirty fast food joint, wearing a pair of broken headphones and scratching away at one of those sheets. The sort of thing where you use a dangerously sharp-looking tool to peel away black coating on paper and reveal a pattern underneath that's really already done for you. I didn't love them and hoped I was doing this one the right way. Black stuff was heaving up where I scratched, so I thought I was doing it right. If I had been any sort of a decent artist, trust me, I wouldn't have been scratching away at that sheet. The scratching of the pointy tool even made me cringe. But I wasn't any sort of a decent artist. So there I was. The woman in the booth across from me had tall brown hair and kept glancing skeptically at me. She had a huge purse and 3 children. Her smallest, a blonde-haired little boy with freckles, was using some junky art app on her phone, and while he was a year younger than me, at least, he was drawing way better than I ever could. Then there was me, 6 years old, tall for that age, skinny for that age, kind of weird for that age, really poor for that age, too. I saw everything through a simple spectrum. All the things everybody takes for granted? Well, I didn't take all those things for granted, of course, when I was 6 years old, and it was such a marvelous perspective of life. But now, everything had more shadow than it seemed. The 6-year-old was still there somewhere, though, and it felt like I was there, past mingled with future. Another person who shared that 6-year-old perspective of life was Matt Pick, the guy from the laundromat on Green Drive. Well, there isn't any green down Green Drive. That is the weird thing about the name. Was, actually, because Green Drive isn't around anymore. It was destroyed when I was 8 and turned into a highway. But Matt Pick, he had a black beard, strong dimpled chin, and neatly parted hair. This, and the fact he always wore a cheap suit, made him look a lot like a businessman. But somehow, he had ended up selling burgers and popsicles and things to passers-by in the poorest business in the poorest town for 30 miles. He had that weird sense. He never talked when he didn't have to. I suspect, like me, when I was younger. It started out in science class when I was 6, 5 months before I sat in the dirty fast food joint.
Normally, I'd take dinner with the other acolytes in the hall's dining room, but this last week, I have been given the terrifying indulgence of a room of my own, carrying out the traditional penance, purgatory, in preparation for tomorrow. My isolation made it easier for me to, unnoticed, slip into my pocket the stone tucked underneath the pannikin of gray mush on my dinner tray. On it is a painted map of the Hall of Golden Fire and its surrounding woods. I could smell the ground charcoal still fresh in the ink tracing my path to the lake in a nearby forest clearing, and could easily detect the good mother's strong, forceful handwriting present in all my textbooks in the strokes of the characters painted on the stone. Suenna, my name, you must seek. The sun is not out, but some have a stronger affinity for the power of her brother Azian of the water. And it is possible I might still summon some scrap of ability tonight. So on the good mother's orders, else I would have no excuse for leaving the tightly run hall, I am now seeking a quiet clearing where nature's presence may be magnetic enough to lure out my magic. As controllers of this magic, the members of the hall hold a real power over this land and all of the various tribes. When I was younger, I watched the good mother and the other schoolmistresses use Goddess Anli's power to coax air into a gust of wind with a deft twitch of the fingers, fling fire onto faraway candles with a bronzed flash of their eyes, coax water to envelop them in skirts of blue sheets by flicking a hand. As I grew up, I watched the other girls grow into those powerful figures capable of cupping life in their hands. It was normal for girls to come into the power at different points in their lives, like starry-eyed Sophie at age 9 as she looked at dirt through a lens and suddenly set the ants on fire. Or red-haired Elise at age 15 who woke up to find orange butterflies fluttering up from the places her fingers brushed the stitched forest scene on her coverlet. But unlike the rest of nature's arbitrarily timed rites of passage, like my first blood, I did not soon join my friends in attaining that same capability for magic. Anli's magic feels pushy and prickly. When sisters of the hall slept two to a bed as girls, I would awake sneezing because of my bedmate, as if her magic was collecting as static on her nightgown. When I was older and more girls grew into their magic, staring too long at them in the dining room would leave glaring blue curlicues and thumbprints to float in my vision for hours afterward. As Anli has kept pushing fingers of her power at me through all of my friends, I've kept my eyes trained on the floor. My hands have learned to default to unpicking and redoing the seams of every robe I own, muscle memory from my time with my parents, where I would help my mother mend villagers' clothes and carry vats of fly, while she secretly taught me the trade of dyes. The right mix of crushed insects for a violent red, turmeric for vivid orange. I always preferred, however, the milder colors, like cinnabar for puce and indigo for deep blue. Despite the long hours of labor they merit, I had fully prepared by age 7 to take over for mother a seamstress, and a fully competent one at that, even testing out a bookkeeping system using newly created numerals sent from the south instead of tally marks, when I sneezed at 3 girls from our province, who then became witches. What I always thought of as an allergy soon led to me being submitted for the good mother's tutelage in the hall. "This will be a good time for you, Suenna," my mother cajoled as she wrapped up some clothes in a blanket she had dyed a soft lavender. "You are named for a famous writer," she said, and I sulkily thought, "Yes, Ennius. And now," she said, "you can make your own story." She reached out to pinch my cheek. "You will have such gorgeous fabrics to wear, and you will be like a princess in a fairy tale, But I've forgotten those tales now, because I've had no choice. It has been a long time since I read a fairy tale, or any kind of storybook for that matter. Most books in the hall are treatises on ruling, a few angry speeches by a man named after a vegetable, and many, many scriptures. The magic of a story is too paltry for the goddess. The magic of a skill is a trifle to the goddess.
Hi, my name's Lila Tierney, and I'm going to read you a bit of my story. Sparrow's Journey. I was born in 1743, the same year as the man who would one day claim the entire Pacific Ocean for the Spanish crown. 64 years later, when he was on his deathbed, I had barely started living. I've come to think of life as a journey, and have realized I will take mine, not wandering over land and sea, but by standing tall and firmly rooted for thousands of years. One day I will tower over the earth, a giant creature by any means, but my name means sparrow, for sequoias float in the highest winds, and with our branches stretched out like wings, we sparrows touch the sky. My life began with fire. The bright flames, common in the dense woods that were my home, were sweeping across the land, charring everything in their path. I felt the heat from inside my tightly closed fir cone, high up in the air, for though I would one day sprout from soil, I began my existence 300 feet above the ground, at the tip of my mother's branch. For more than a decade I had hung in the secluded cocoon, but then, as the heat from the fire reached far up into the forest canopy, I began to feel the tough shell of my fir cone give out. Weakened by the squirrels and beetles who had eaten the outer scales, it broke open, and I fell, landing upon the scorched earth. As a small sapling, I waited, sheltered in the shade of my mother, surrounded and protected by my community that formed the misty, dense canopy above. The forest was vibrant, alive with slivers of pale light, breezes, and millions of things even tinier than me. I felt the tickling of insects, the dew on my needles, and fleeting warmth of sun rays as they passed overhead. My young roots went no farther than my mother's, But as I felt her embrace below ground, I could, through her, connect with my entire family for miles. My forest home covered great expanses of land like an emerald cloak. I was surrounded by woody giants, some of whom were hundreds of feet tall and thousands of years old. They mesmerized me with their wisdom, their branches swaying with a plethora of secrets. Their bark was blackened and scarred, but they were still standing, spreading their gnarled branches up to the stars. As I grew older and my roots expanded, they intertwined and even fused with the roots of other trees. There would be large swaths of forest between our trunks, but just underneath, we would be one. Mammoth Tree Felled in Calaveras. The Pot Grows Times, August 23, 1852. James Wimbledon. In Calaveras, California, a massive specimen marked as the Discovery Tree was felled by no less than 5 men. It was identified as a giant sequoia, an enormous conifer common in the wild lands of California. The recorded count of the tree's rings was as high as 1,300. New Progress in Logging. The Salinas City Index, May 9, 1891. Patrick Hemsey. A number of sequoia trees in California, including the Mark Twain tree, have been successfully logged to not only provide lumber for development, but also to make way for cattle farms and grazing lands, promising progress for people and industries in this modern age. I was 104 years old, and had only just begun my journey, when one day, before the mist of the morning dew had lifted, a strange unease took hold of me. The ground was vibrating violently, absorbing the ripping shudder of an incredibly large metal saw against a nearby tree. The animal stilled, save for a raven, which croaked ominously, its eerie sound piercing through the shrouds of fog. My world flashed with an eternity of ache and chaos in a single instant, as an age-old giant fell with a thunderous, earth-shaking thud. I felt a curious sensation that a rather large fragment, of me had died, as the tree's roots wrenched from mine, and its branches cascaded down, its egress leaving the forest in a deafening silence.
I really enjoyed reading the editorial group stories, and I really liked knowing that I had comrades who were editing their pieces at the same time I was, and who were, investing their time and energy into my story as well as theirs, just like I was. I think that we were all pretty like-minded, so when we met up to discuss ideas, it was not just really helpful or productive, it was fun, and I liked having all of the different perspectives, because without having multiple perspectives, I would just be looking at my story like I wrote it, and so that was really helpful.
I really loved the whole revision process because it felt like I had my own writers group filled with like-minded people, and then when I got to read everyone's stories, it reminded me of how much I love writing, and it inspired me to work harder on my piece. And then finally meeting everyone over Zoom actually kind of felt like meeting celebrities, because I liked their stories so much. And their feedback they gave me was super thoughtful and really creative, and it made me think harder about the world I created in Hole in the Wall and harder about my character. And the feedback that helped the most with my revision was their suggestion to give Arya more inner monologue and explain more about the workings of her world. And then they also suggested adding a small piece of dialogue with Arya and her sister Bao.
In the 2 years since I was an Inklings Book Contest winner, I have broadened my reading horizons significantly. I tried genres I'd never tried before, and I, found new favorite authors and passions, and that inspired me to try writing in genres I'd never written before, including mystery. That's what my story is. It's a mystery, and I'd never done that before. I was a little nervous because it always seemed to me that, these authors have to be so smart. They have to figure out the whole mystery, and then they have to figure out how their character is going to, go through the process of solving the mystery. But it turned out to be really fun. And what's next is I'm hoping to turn The Sundial Case, my story, into a novel, because I just got so many ideas, I couldn't fit them all into the contest word count limit. And so I'm hoping to do that in the future. And it is my last year to do the Inklings contest since I'm a rising 10th grader, but I just had a really good experience through all of it. And I would encourage anybody who is watching and has not participated, that even if you don't really consider yourself a writer, it's something fun that you can do, and everyone gets feedback on their work. And I think that was very inspiring the first year that I did the contest. My name is Maisie Ferguson, and this is my story, The Sundial Case. Testing, Copernicus Remington here. Take 3. I had it in my mind to hate, no, despise, Sundial Grand, even before Dad pulled into Great Aunt Frances's circle drive fit for a palace. Because Great Uncle Shepherd died last year, and there hadn't been any word of a sale yet, Dad forced me to pack up for the summer so we could go help Frances sort through her estate. Great Aunt Frances is Dad's only living relative, so at the time I thought he felt obligated. But I didn't want to spend my summer sitting inside a creepy old house with an old lady I barely remembered sorting through boring antiquities. The house was full of spiderwebs, green marble pillars, and furniture covered in thick white sheets like misshapen phantoms. Frances herself had blue hair, not the cool kind, papery skin, and tiny spherical spectacles that didn't appear to help her sight in the least. It seemed she only lived in a small area of the house, back by the kitchen and solarium. The kitchen was sunny and smelled of lavender soap, but we soon left its comforting quarters and headed to the parlor. We spent several hours dusting and polishing, and nearly half the day sorting through Great Uncle Shepherd's extensive postcard collection, which, was sort of cool. I was faint with exhaustion, so Dad finally decided I could take a much-needed break. "Why don't you roam the upstairs halls?" said Frances. "Who knows what you'll come upon in this house? There's an old servant bell in every room. Ring if you get lost." "Thank you. May I take these postcards?" I had found 2 that I liked. Each displayed a strange side of illegible writing, but the pictures were interesting. A pictogram of the Sphinx on one, and the other sported large lettering in a foreign language. They were the first objects that called to me in this house. They were surrounded in a shroud of mystery and somehow calmed the fear that I'd waste my whole summer away. It was something I could keep myself occupied with, something I could claim as my own, even temporarily, in a house of someone else's history. "Of course, dear," Frances said. "Shepherd wouldn't have wanted them shut up in a box, crumbling to dust."
I'm Claire Lignori, and I will be reading from my story, Hole in the Wall. Aria didn't know about the hole in the wall. This was especially strange because she had lived in this house her whole life. When she was little, she had explored every corner of it, imagining she was walking around a sunken ship in the sea, or maybe even a submarine. These days, when she wanted to play that game, she would secretly go up to one of the boarded-up windows, pull out the nails, and get entranced by the smoky darkness beyond the 4-inch thick glass. Now she strolled down the hallway by her room and up the stairway. She stepped up the hard, cool marble steps. She smiled, thinking about how her and her sister used to sprint up the stairs like their life depended on their speed, because in their stories, it did. In fact, she and her sister Bao had made up many stories together, lots of them involving finding a mysterious room that hadn't been there before. It always felt like one of those dreams where it seemed so real but at the same time so unbelievable. As young children, they spent most of their time indoors, even though they could have gone outside and explored the beach or rode the rides at the amusement park. That's what they should have done. Today, and for many days now, going outside was all Aria wanted, but it was far too late. Aria walked back down the staircase into the basement, where everything looked the same as it had when she was a little girl. Their 2-sided TV sat in the middle, with 4 yellow reclining chairs surrounding it. This was where her family used to relax and watch movies together. It was also where Bao and Aria used to play with their hide-and-seek robots. Those things were the rage when they came out, but they were way overrated. Such terrible hiders. She didn't remember exactly when the room had become so boring. No one but Aria came down anymore. There was nothing new to watch, yet Aria spent many hours a day sitting in her favorite chair, rereading a book or rewatching an old 2-dimensional show. Except These days, Arya didn't feel like turning on the TV and looking for something to watch that she hadn't seen 3 times already. So she just sat in her chair and thought about what her mom had once told her. Betty, her mom, had responded calmly when Arya told her how bored she was. That's okay. In fact, allow yourself to be bored. That's when you are most creative.